Welcome the Lord's chosen. Watch a room long enough, and you'll learn that some people only feel powerful when their mouths start sprinting faster than their minds. That's where this story begins, right in that dangerous gap between what people think they're getting away with and what someone unexpectedly hears. There's a strange kind of comedy in it too, because the louder some folks talk, the more convinced they are that the universe itself is on mute. They forget sound travels, walls are thin, and human ears are far more efficient than they give them credit for. In fact, psychologists have found that people speak 20% more carelessly when they believe the listener isn't paying attention. That's a huge margin for error, and yet most run straight into it like they're auditioning for an Olympic event in reckless commentary. But here's the twist. The real suspense isn't in what they say. It's in the moment someone finally pauses the room with that sharp, spine-straightening line, "Hold up! Are they hearing this?" Everything shifts. Their confidence gets dragged into the spotlight. Their casual boldness suddenly feels like borrowed clothes. That's when the scene becomes equal parts reality check and comedy, because you can literally watch expressions malfunction in real time. 1 minute they're performing, the next minute they're praying for a rewind button that has never existed in the history of humanity. This moment, this freeze frame of recklessness meeting awareness, is where truth, ego, and unexpected accountability collide. It exposes the gap between who people pretend to be when they think you're not listening and who they actually are when they realize you were tuned in the whole time. And once that awareness hits, every syllable they carelessly sprayed into the air becomes a boomerang, returning with perfect accuracy. So let's step into that zone where talk runs wild, ears catch everything, and reality taps someone on the shoulder with impeccable timing. Because the funniest part, half the time they were never whispering. They just assumed you were too blind or too distant to hear the very words that are now about to expose them from the inside out. Number 1, people talk the loudest when they think no one in the room has the courage to question them. Some people have a talent for filling a room with words, as if volume alone could convince everyone of their authority. They run their mouths like they're painting a masterpiece, but the truth is it's often a desperate attempt to cover their own uncertainty. The louder they get, the more they're testing the waters, measuring who will blink first, who will sit quietly, and who might dare to interrupt their performance. They're betting on the idea that nobody will push back, and until someone does, they feel untouchable. That sense of untouchability is fragile. It exists only in the illusion that fear or politeness will protect them from scrutiny. The moment someone actually raises a hand or tilts their head with genuine attention, the game changes. Suddenly, the room stops being a safe echo chamber, and their words, which once bounced around unchecked, start landing with weight. The bravado they carried so comfortably vanishes because it was never built on substance. It was built on assumption. This is why that pause, the one that says, "Hold up, are they hearing this?" is so jarring. It's like a mirror held up to their performance, reflecting all the gaps, all the inconsistencies, all the arrogance that they assumed would go unnoticed. People who talk the loudest often do so not because they have something important to say, but because they believe silence will equal power. They miscalculate the courage of others and forget that real influence doesn't need volume. It needs discernment, presence, and authenticity. When someone dares to quietly confront or even just acknowledge what's being said, the loud talker's world tilts. They realize their words have consequences, that someone was paying attention, and that confidence based on assumption is just a paper tower waiting to collapse. This is the raw, unfiltered truth about human behavior. Noise is often a mask, and silence, especially the silence that holds someone accountable, is the thing that reveals everything they never intended to show. Number 2, Most people expose their true character by accident, not intention, and they assume you're too distracted to notice. People often think that who they really are can stay hidden behind clever words, carefully curated stories, or rehearsed bravado. They speak as if they're performing for an audience that won't look too closely, as if the mask they wear will fool everyone in the room. But the truth is far more unforgiving. Most of the time, their real character slips out in the tiniest, most unexpected ways. A sarcastic remark, a brag that goes a little too far, a subtle dig disguised as humor. They don't plan it. They don't mean for it to happen, but it happens anyway, and it's always noticed by someone who is paying attention. The dangerous assumption they make is that nobody is really listening, that the room is full of people too polite, too distracted, or too self-absorbed to catch the cracks in their performance. That assumption is the trap. Words that feel harmless to them are signals to anyone watching closely. A single sentence can reveal insecurity, arrogance, selfishness, or even outright cruelty. And the irony is brutal. They believe their chatter is camouflage, but it's actually a spotlight. When someone finally says, "Hold up, are they hearing this?" It's more than a pause. It's the moment the mask starts to crumble. That accidental exposure becomes undeniable because it meets awareness, and the person talking realizes that their carefully constructed image was built on shifting sand. The casual way they assumed invisibility protected them backfires spectacularly. Their intentions don't matter because character isn't measured by intention. It's revealed in behavior, in offhand remarks, in the tiny betrayals of self-control that occur when they feel safe. This is why overhearing someone's reckless words can be so electrifying. It's a glimpse behind the curtain, a raw, unfiltered view of who they are when they believe no one is watching. And it's a reminder that the truth rarely waits for permission. People expose themselves constantly, and the moment someone notices is the moment reality catches up with pretense. That's when the shock lands hardest, because they finally realize the world was listening all along, and their accidental honesty has just rewritten how everyone will see them. Number 3, loose talk is a strategy. Some people use noise as camouflage because silence would reveal how much they actually lack. Some people have mastered the art of filling space with words, turning chatter into a shield. The more they talk, the less anyone notices the gaps in their knowledge, confidence, or capability. Noise becomes a deliberate strategy, a way to distract from what's really going on beneath the surface. They speak quickly, loudly, and often, assuming that the sheer volume of their words can convince others that competence, wisdom, or power is lurking somewhere inside. Silence, on the other hand, is dangerous for them. In silence, their emptiness becomes obvious. Loose talk is their camouflage, a mask that only works if no one is paying attention or if the audience is too polite to call it out. The moment someone says, "Hold up, are they hearing this?" that camouflage shatters. All the words, once meant to cover, now highlight exactly what they lack. The strategy backfires because attention and awareness have a way of piercing through noise. People who rely on constant chatter to hide inadequacy quickly find themselves exposed, their confidence evaporating under scrutiny. What seemed like control becomes chaos. Loose talk also serves another purpose. It tests the environment. By talking excessively, some people gauge who is paying attention, who will challenge them, and who will sit quietly. It's a subtle way of measuring the room while pretending to dominate it. But this measurement is always risky. The wrong listener, the sharp observer, or the moment of unexpected confrontation can turn the strategy into a trap. Every word meant to distract now becomes evidence of what was being hidden. The brilliance of this moment is in its inevitability. Noise can hide a lack of substance temporarily, but not permanently. The louder someone talks to cover gaps, the more obvious those gaps become when they are finally noticed. Loose talk is a gamble, and the house always wins when someone actually listens. It strips away pretense, forces accountability, and exposes the difference between words designed to impress and the quiet reality of what actually exists behind them. Number 4. When someone suddenly asks, "Are they hearing this?" It's usually the first time the speakers confront their own words without the comfort of ego. People often speak as if words exist in a vacuum, floating harmlessly until they're acted upon. They talk freely, confident that their audience is either too distracted or too polite to process the weight of what's being said. Their ego carries them, whispering that attention equals approval, that noise is harmless, and that nobody will dare to challenge or even truly listen. But then it happens. Someone pauses the room, tilts their head, or delivers that sharp line. "Are they hearing this?" In that instant, the speakers are forced to step outside themselves and witness their own words as if for the first time. It's a jarring confrontation because ego is comfortable with admiration or silence, but raw awareness has no loyalty. Suddenly, the words they spoke without thought are laid bare, stripped of context, and exposed to scrutiny. Every exaggeration, every slight, every careless brag or insult becomes visible in a way they didn't anticipate. The room no longer exists as a space for performance. It becomes a mirror, reflecting exactly what they revealed about themselves. This is the moment where intention meets consequence, and many are unprepared for the collision. The brilliance of this confrontation lies in its subtlety. It doesn't scream, it doesn't argue, it simply interrupts the illusion that their words were without consequence. And yet, it is devastating. People freeze, stumble, and sometimes backtrack, realizing that the confident persona they projected relied entirely on the assumption that nobody was truly listening. The pause exposes gaps between image and reality, ambition and ability, arrogance and substance. This moment is more than just being overheard. It's a reckoning. It forces self-reflection in real time, stripping away excuses and revealing what the speaker really is when stripped of the comfort of ego. Awareness replaces performance, and suddenly the loudest mouth in the room is left grappling with the simplest truth. Words carry weight, and the moment someone truly listens, there is no escape from the reality they unveil. Number 5. People speak freely when they believe you're powerless, and they choke on their own words when they realize you're not. There's a strange confidence that comes with assumed dominance. Some people talk without restraint because they think no one has the influence, insight, or courage to challenge them. They fill the room with bold statements, opinions, and judgments, convinced that their words will float harmlessly into the air, unnoticed and unchallenged. In their mind, power isn't measured by who is right or wrong. It's measured by who can shout the loudest without consequence. This perceived safety gives them freedom to exaggerate, manipulate, or belittle, all while maintaining a sense of control over the narrative. The problem arises when their assumption of power proves wrong. The moment someone quietly yet unmistakably registers every word, their confidence begins to falter. Their voice, once strong and unshakable, wavers as the realization sinks in they miscalculated. The audience is not powerless, and now the room's dynamic shifts. The very words they flung so carelessly become their own trap, echoing back with weight they never anticipated. Statements meant to dominate, control, or impress suddenly expose insecurity, arrogance, and lack of awareness. This is the irony of unchecked speech. It works only until someone who matters is paying attention. Once the imbalance of assumed power is corrected, the loudest talker experiences a sudden, almost visceral shock. Chatter that felt like armor now feels like chains, and the confidence they relied on collapses under scrutiny. Their free-flowing speech, which once made them feel untouchable, now reads as reckless and revealing. In this moment, truth doesn't need to be spoken. It merely exists in observation. The loud talker is forced to confront the reality they ignored. Freedom to speak is never absolute, and power is not granted by volume. Awareness transforms the atmosphere, and suddenly every boast, insult, and exaggeration is subject to interpretation. The same words that built a false fortress now become evidence of its fragility, leaving the speaker scrambling to regain footing in a room they no longer control. Number 6, loud mouths rarely expect consequences because they've lived their whole lives surrounded by people who enable them. Some people talk as if the universe has a pause button, convinced that their words carry no weight beyond the moment they leave their lips. They speak freely, boldly, and often recklessly because they've never faced the fallout before. Their lives are built on patterns of enablement, people nodding, laughing, or quietly stepping aside instead of confronting the carelessness or arrogance of their speech. Over time, this creates a dangerous sense of invincibility. They come to believe that consequences are optional, that the world will always allow them to speak first and justify later, and that their loudness equates to authority. But reality has a way of catching up, usually when it's least expected. The moment someone pauses the room with a quiet but sharp acknowledgement, "Hold up, are they hearing this?" The foundation that supported their reckless freedom begins to crack. The words that once seemed harmless or unnoticed are suddenly under a microscope, and the loud talker realizes they miscalculated. The pattern of enablement that has always protected them is replaced with awareness, and awareness doesn't play favorites. The consequences they never imagined begin to surface in real time, whether through judgment, accountability, or the silent recalibration of everyone listening. This exposure is often shocking for them because it's not the volume of their words that mattered, it's the assumptions behind it. They assumed silence, passivity, or ignorance would shield them. But the truth is that words always carry a legacy, and even the smallest audience can witness the full scope of carelessness. Being heard suddenly transforms the room, turning laughter or polite nods into observation, critique, and internal reckoning. Loud mouths fail to anticipate that freedom to speak isn't freedom from consequence. Every careless statement, exaggerated story, or unnecessary insult that once passed unnoticed becomes a record of character when someone truly listens. The shock of accountability exposes the gap between perception and reality, and the person who relied on habitual enablement is left scrambling, realizing for the first time that loudness is only as powerful as the environment that tolerates it, and sometimes the environment changes in an instant. Number 7. Talking recklessly is the cheapest form of rebellion. There's no risk until the wrong ears hear it. Some people speak boldly, almost carelessly, as if their words are weapons meant to assert freedom or challenge norms. They relish the rush of saying what others won't, testing boundaries and flaunting rules, convinced that the act of speaking loudly or provocatively is proof of courage. To them, it feels like rebellion, an act of independence, a statement of power. It's thrilling because, in their eyes, there's almost no cost. They assume the right audience will applaud, the wrong audience won't notice, or that the consequences are a distant problem for someone else to deal with. It's rebellion without risk, a cheap thrill that inflates ego while masking vulnerability. The danger appears the moment someone unexpectedly intercepts those words. Suddenly, what felt like fearlessness turns into exposure. The recklessness that was once an act of defiance becomes a trap, as someone fully aware of the implications processes everything that's been said. Their audience is no longer passive or deferential. They are attentive, discerning, and capable of reflecting the speaker's intentions back with sharp clarity. That thrill of rebellion crashes under the weight of recognition. The words meant to assert independence now reveal insecurity, impulsiveness, or thoughtlessness. This moment exposes a harsh truth. Rebellion only feels free when the environment protects you. Words carry consequences whether or not they're intended to, and assuming immunity from impact is a luxury few can afford. Talking without thought is like building a fire in a dry forest. Exciting at first, until it ignites everything around you in ways you never anticipated. The brilliance of this realization lies in its immediacy. One sentence overheard, one pause, one line cutting through the noise can instantly transform the speaker from bold and untouchable to exposed and scrambling. Reckless speech is deceptively cheap because it hides the potential cost. The moment awareness enters the room, the true price of words is revealed. What was once entertainment, defiance, or ego-boosting bravado becomes accountability in its purest, most unflinching form. Number 8. Most people don't think about the weight of what they say. They only think about the reaction they want in the moment. Words are powerful, but few truly consider their lasting impact. Most people speak impulsively, focused only on the immediate effect, making someone laugh, shocking the room, showing off, or asserting dominance. They're driven by instant gratification, by the desire to elicit a reaction that feeds their ego, without pausing to measure the resonance of their words. What they don't realize is that language isn't temporary. It lingers, echoes, and often comes back in ways they never anticipated. Every careless remark carries the potential to expose more than intention. It reveals character, mindset, and priorities. This is why the moment someone interrupts with, "Hold up, are they hearing this?" hits like a sudden jolt. The speaker, previously lost in the thrill of reaction seeking, is forced to face their words from an entirely different perspective. No longer are the words tools of influence or entertainment. They are evidence of thoughtlessness, arrogance, or insecurity. The people who speak this way often assume everyone else is distracted or too polite to care. But awareness doesn't require loud applause. It thrives in observation. The reaction they wanted in the moment suddenly feels irrelevant compared to the clarity of what has actually been revealed. The danger is compounded because impulsive speech is a mask. In the rush to get a laugh, shock someone, or assert dominance, deeper insecurities are exposed. It's a trap they rarely see coming. The louder they chase temporary validation, the more transparent they become. And when someone calls attention to the fact that their words are being registered, interpreted, and weighed, the thrill of the moment evaporates. They confront a stark truth. Speaking without thought is never harmless, and reactions are fleeting, while consequences can be permanent. This is the unflinching reality of human communication. Most people prioritize momentary applause over substance, failing to see that words carry weight long after the laughter dies. The instant someone notices and processes what's really being said, the speaker is left vulnerable, scrambling to reconcile the reaction they sought with the truth they inadvertently revealed. It's a confrontation that exposes both character and consequence in equal measure. Number 9. Some people speak boldly, not because they're brave, but because they assume you're blind to the undertones. Bold speech often carries an illusion of courage. Some people walk into a room and fill it with confident statements, biting humor, or sharp opinions, giving the impression of fearlessness. But the reality behind the bravado is often the opposite. They're not brave, they're calculating. They speak loudly or boldly because they believe no one is noticing the subtle layers beneath the words. The insecurity, the arrogance, the petty jealousy, or the manipulative intent that lurks just below the surface. Their speech is a performance designed to mask vulnerability, relying on the assumption that the audience is too distracted, too polite, or too naive to read between the lines. The moment someone says, "Hold up, are they hearing this?" the mask begins to crumble. What seemed like fearless confidence is suddenly exposed as deliberate misdirection. The undertones that were meant to go unnoticed are now glaringly obvious, refracted through the lens of awareness. Every jab, every boast, every sarcastic flourish reveals more than intended. Boldness without scrutiny is a bluff, and the bluff rarely holds when someone actually listens. This is why awareness is so powerful. It transforms what was intended to impress or dominate into a window of self-revelation. People who rely on assumed ignorance often miscalculate the perceptiveness of those around them. They forget that speech is a two-way street. Words are sent into the world, but interpretation comes back from those listening. Once someone discerns the hidden layers, the speaker's confidence falters, because they realize that boldness is only as effective as the blindness of the audience. The irony is brutal. The louder someone tries to convince the room of their power or wisdom, the more transparent their flaws become when someone is truly paying attention. Bold speech, when unsupported by substance, becomes a self-exposure. The person who assumed invisibility suddenly faces scrutiny, and the undertones they relied on to stay safe are now the very evidence that dismantles the image they tried so hard to project. Awareness doesn't shout, it simply exists. And in that existence, everything the speaker thought was hidden is revealed. Number 10. When people whisper behind your back, the volume isn't in their words, but in their insecurity. They never expect you to hear what exposes them. People often assume that speaking quietly about someone shields them from accountability. Whispers, murmurs, and half-concealed conversations are designed to feel safe, a private space where criticism, judgment, or gossip can flow without consequence. But the real weight of these words isn't in what's said, it's in why they're said. Whispering is born of insecurity. It's an admission that the speaker doesn't have the courage to address issues openly, or the confidence to speak without hiding. The effort to cloak their voice is a signal, not of subtlety but of weakness. When someone unexpectedly overhears these whispers, the dynamic changes instantly. The speakers, confident in their assumed invisibility, are confronted with the reality that their words carry meaning beyond the private bubble they created. The irony is striking. What was intended as a shield of secrecy becomes a mirror reflecting their own vulnerabilities. The whispered critique, meant to diminish, now exposes the speaker's character, revealing jealousy, fear, or pettiness. In trying to avoid accountability, they have highlighted their own flaws. This is why the moment, "Hold up, are they hearing this?" lands is so powerful. Whispers, previously thought harmless, gain a new volume in the ears of someone paying attention. The room's energy shifts. The quiet arrogance or passive aggressiveness that guided the speaker's actions is suddenly visible, and the very act of speaking behind someone's back becomes evidence of insecurity rather than influence. The unsuspecting observer gains insight, not just into the subject of the whispers, but into the true character of the whisperer. What's remarkable is that the exposure is silent. It doesn't require confrontation or argument. Awareness alone is enough to dismantle the false sense of safety that whispers create. Every hushed word becomes a revelation, a quiet but undeniable testament to the fact that insecurity often speaks louder than confidence. Those who whisper forget that ears exist beyond their assumptions, and when someone listens closely, the whispers reveal more than the speakers ever intended. Number 11. The real discomfort isn't that someone heard them. It's that someone understood them better than they understand themselves. There's a unique kind of panic that strikes when people realize that their words haven't just been heard. They've been interpreted, dissected, and understood on a level they never intended. Most speakers operate under the illusion that as long as they're performing their version of reality, the audience will only skim the surface. They assume that meaning can be controlled, softened, or spun, and that nobody is paying enough attention to uncover the truth lurking beneath the bravado. But the moment someone actually tunes in, something profound happens. Comprehension outpaces intention, and the words they flung carelessly now carry a reflection they weren't prepared to face. This is why the line, "Hold up, are they hearing this?" is more than just a pause. It's a mirror. People freeze, not because exposure itself is uncomfortable, but because understanding is heavier than noise. Someone who understands isn't just listening, they're processing the hidden motives, the insecurities, the arrogance, and the gaps between what's said and what's meant. They're seeing the patterns the speaker thought were invisible, the contradictions the speaker assumed would be ignored, and the true intentions that were never voiced aloud. And that clarity terrifies the speaker more than any outright confrontation could. Words, after all, are more than sound. They are evidence. They reveal patterns of thought and behavior that even the person speaking might not fully recognize. The moment someone grasps that, the loudest talker becomes acutely aware of their own vulnerability. Ego, pride, and carefully maintained facades crumble because understanding doesn't allow for shortcuts. Unlike casual listening, comprehension holds the speaker accountable for the entirety of what they reveal, intentionally or not. This is why awareness is such a threat. It doesn't shout or argue. It quietly uncovers the self-deception that most people live with. To be understood better than you understand yourself is to confront a reality you can no longer manipulate with volume, charm, or distraction. That's the real shock behind overhearing. It forces the speaker to meet themselves in full truth, and very few are prepared for that encounter. Number 12. People collapse when their private arrogance meets public reality. Arrogance is often a private performance, a rehearsed confidence that exists comfortably behind closed doors or within circles of agreement. People speak with certainty, project dominance, and act as if their ideas or status are unassailable. But that power is always conditional. It thrives in environments that tolerate it, where admiration or fear shields them from scrutiny. The moment that private arrogance is confronted by public reality, everything unravels. Reality doesn't bend to ego. It simply exists. And when someone brings awareness to the room, whether through observation, acknowledgement, or that sharp pause, "Hold up, are they hearing this?" the illusion shatters instantly. The collapse isn't always dramatic, but it's unmistakable. Expressions falter, voices waver, and confidence turns brittle. Statements that once felt bold and untouchable suddenly reveal flaws, exaggerations, and contradictions. Arrogance, when unchallenged, can feel limitless, but reality is impartial. It reflects truth without bias, and unlike the private spaces where arrogance feels safe, public awareness has no loyalty. The louder someone speaks to assert superiority, the more fragile that superiority becomes when the room is fully present and paying attention. This confrontation is almost poetic. People who believed they could control perception are forced to confront evidence that they cannot. Every boast, every insult, every claim is suddenly measured against awareness rather than assumption. And in that measurement, the discrepancy between who they thought they were and who they actually are becomes undeniable. They realize that confidence built on exaggeration or delusion is temporary, and exposure is permanent. The lesson is brutal but clear. Arrogance is only as strong as the environment that tolerates it. When that environment shifts from passive observation to attentive awareness, the collapse is swift and total. Words lose their power, gestures lose their intimidation, and the carefully curated self-image crumbles. People are left scrambling, not because reality is cruel, but because reality doesn't negotiate with pretense. It simply exists, and it catches everyone who overestimates their immunity to scrutiny. Number 13. Some people talk like life is a rehearsal, forgetting that every word carries consequences in the real world. There's a certain carelessness in how people speak when they treat conversations like practice sessions. They throw words around freely, exaggerate, joke, or even insult as if nothing really matters, assuming the room is just a stage and everyone else is playing along. In these rehearsals, mistakes feel harmless and missteps feel temporary. But life doesn't work that way. Unlike a rehearsal, every word has the potential to leave an impression, influence perception, and expose truths people would rather keep hidden. What is said in passing can ripple far beyond the moment it's spoken. The shock comes when someone interrupts the flow with a quiet but decisive line, "Hold up, are they hearing this?" And suddenly, the rehearsal is over. The speaker is confronted with the real-world impact of their words. What they thought was inconsequential now carries weight, accountability, and sometimes judgment. Statements made for amusement, ego, or self-expression reveal not only intent, but character. The careless bravado that once felt safe in the abstract now exists in the concrete, and the person talking realizes that their words can't be retracted, edited, or staged for effect. This is where awareness cuts the deepest. People who treat life as a rehearsal underestimate the attentiveness of those around them. They assume that no one is listening closely, or that attention won't lead to understanding. But someone listening, really listening, transforms the environment. Every flippant comment, every exaggerated story, every underhanded remark is exposed in full light. The speaker can no longer hide behind context, tone, or performance. Their words, once free and weightless, are now tangible reflections of who they are, unfiltered and undeniable. The reality is unrelenting. Life isn't a rehearsal, and words are never without consequence. Speaking carelessly is a gamble, and the room eventually pays attention. The moment someone notices and processes what's being said, the rehearsal ends, and the full impact of unguarded speech hits. Confidence built on rehearsal crumbles under reality, and the person who assumed words were harmless is forced to face the undeniable truth of their own exposure. Number 14. The moment they realize you heard everything is the moment they understand the difference between attention and awareness. Most people operate under a comforting illusion that as long as someone is quiet or passive, nothing they say truly matters. They speak freely, confidently, and often recklessly, assuming that attention alone is harmless. They believe that eyes looking in their direction or nods in agreement are the same as understanding, that volume, charm, or performance can disguise reality. What they fail to realize is that there is a monumental difference between attention and awareness. Attention can be superficial. It can be distracted, polite, or passive. Awareness, on the other hand, is active, discerning, and unforgiving. The moment someone pauses and signals that they are aware, everything changes. Words that once floated freely now carry weight, and every careless statement, every boast, every subtle insult or exaggeration becomes evidence. The person speaking suddenly realizes that attention is not the same as agreement or ignorance. Someone has processed every nuance, every hidden motive, every tone, and every implication. That realization hits harder than confrontation because it bypasses ego defenses. They are no longer merely being observed, they are being understood, measured, and mentally recorded in full clarity. This is why that pause, hold up, are they hearing this, is so terrifying for the careless talker. The confidence they relied on, the assumption that words can float safely into empty space, collapses instantly. Awareness turns noise into insight, chatter into accountability. The room is no longer a playground for ego. It becomes a mirror reflecting exactly who they are when they believe no one is watching. Every hidden arrogance, insecurity, or pretension becomes visible. In that moment, the speaker is confronted not with anger or judgment, but with clarity. They realize the dangerous truth of communication. Words are never private, and true awareness cannot be evaded. What was assumed to be harmless speech becomes a full revelation, and the illusion of control shatters. The difference between attention and awareness is subtle but absolute, and the person who miscalculates it discovers, often too late, that being heard is nothing compared to being truly understood. The truth is simple, yet brutally overlooked. Words are never harmless, and the people who speak recklessly often forget that someone is always listening, observing, and understanding far more than they realize. What starts as casual chatter, bold claims, or whispered gossip can quickly become a mirror reflecting who they truly are, the insecurities, the arrogance, and the gaps between image and reality. Every careless word, every boast, every attempt to dominate the room carries consequences the speaker rarely anticipates. Confidence built on assumption collapses the moment awareness enters the room, and the line between attention and genuine understanding becomes crystal clear. Every point we've explored shows the same undeniable reality. The world is listening, and it doesn't care about pretense. People are exposed not just by what they say, but by how they underestimate the power of someone fully tuned in. Noise can hide insecurity for a moment. Arrogance can feel safe behind polite silence, and loose talk can appear harmless. But the moment someone actually hears, processes, and comprehends, the illusion shatters. That's the awakening, the pause, the undeniable hold-up moment where everything changes and the truth behind every word is laid bare. The lesson is clear. Speak with awareness. Measure the impact of your words, and never assume your audience is powerless or blind, because the difference between being heard and being truly understood is enormous and often irreversible. Words can empower, but they can also expose, humiliate, and redefine how the world sees you. If this gave you insight, a jolt of awareness, or even just a deeper appreciation for the weight of words, make sure you don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to the channel for more content that cuts straight to the core. Like this video to support what we do. Comment to share your own experiences, and share it with someone who needs this reminder. Awareness begins with attention, and this is the moment you chose to pay it. Stay blessed always.